getting in touch with something so much bigger than ourselves not only gives us permission, but it opens the doors of our perceptions on every level to grow beyond what we can imagine now.
You're listening to the Science and Spirit of Happy podcast, where we discuss the rational, strategic, and psychological methods, but also the deep reasons and spiritual philosophy behind being happy down to the soul. Happiness isn't just hedonism. It's not even solely personal. Getting happy dramatically increases your effectiveness in every area, from business and finance to relationships. When we align with our own personal version of ideal, we end up not just happier, but healthier, more whole, more successful and richer, but even loving and loved. It's my opinion that getting happy for yourself is the absolute best way to serve the people in your life. I'm your host, Laura Lee Bowers, master healer and academic researcher, and this is another episode diving into
the science and spirit of happy.
The logical path to soul.
G'day, y'all. Welcome back. I almost didn't do this podcast. Not because it isn't important. It is incredibly important, but I almost skipped it because I couldn't separate in my mind very easily the difference between inspiration and purpose. And I think part of that is from something I call the ya-ya-yas when I'm teaching my students. And the ya-ya-yas are when we say, yeah, I know that already. And it's most often when we have that reaction, we have the ya-ya-yas hit us, that we actually need to be paying more attention. So today I'm talking about inspiration, and I think that maybe I got the ya-ya-yas for a blend of reasons. One was definitely that I needed to pay attention to this, and I wasn't fully getting it. But the other, I think, is because historically speaking, this is something that I have either been naturally inclined towards, or it's been a hard-won skill for me, and it has become sort of inherent with my character in recent years, at least. Nonetheless, I was obviously still had a major blind spot towards it, and it's definitely the next step. You know, I thought about people who were getting unstuck, and I talked about this kind of radical responsibility in the last episode. If you haven't listened to that, you definitely should. But for most people, I think like going from being stuck to hopping into your purpose, like there's a very big step in between. And that is feeling like the world is on your team. So whatever that looks like to you, it can look like a lot of different things. People believe in different things. They believe in God. They put their faith in nature, in source. They tap into sort of the interconnectedness of the world, into unconditional love, the divine traits of gratitude and forgiveness. And they can feel this kind of expansive force of nurturance, support, and, what we're talking about today, inspiration. But what that also does, feeling like there is something bigger that is rooting for you, or something bigger that is more powerful than the feelings of stuckness, it makes the world make sense. And if you look around, and I'm going to talk about a lot of things that get in our way. And I hope this isn't too convoluted, because when we're talking about inspiration and purpose, this episode and the next one, we're getting into the realm of spirit. And that is very obtuse. And it's difficult to put into linear form, to explain it to you in words. So I'm going to try my best, and I do pride myself on being pretty good at this. So, I hope I can do better than most could at this. But when we're looking at objective reality, when we're looking at the world, when we're looking at, data, etc., or the natural curve of human progress, we'll see that it's more positive than not. And I'm going to go into statistics later on in this episode to appease our negativity bias. But what people get out of worshiping a guru, or worshiping, a savior, or even, a scientist in a lab, like paying reverent worship to, the biological processes of nature. What that does for us is it gets us in touch with magic. And I mentioned the negativity bias. What that means in my understanding of things in general is that our conscious minds are kind of designed to problem solve, which is excellent, because we run into quite a lot of problems, and a lot of the things that we enjoy today as humans are the result of problem solving. So the conscious mind is kind of wired to notice what's not working so that it can find a way to move beyond it. It's not really the conscious mind's job to be grateful, or to love, or to, feel inspired. The inspiration and purpose we're talking about in the next episode, because they're intricately linked, is really in the realm of emotions and spirit. So when I was talking about getting unstuck in the last episode, that was really mental and physical. So I'm talking about, making a firm decision, deciding that, you cannot do this anymore, and that you will not. And then making physical moves to change the situation. So making a very, very firm line in the sand, boundaries on the mental and physical plane. And it's very important, if we aren't currently, the happiest we could be, to get our mind on board, because the mind is a control room, and the mind is the place in which I can actually communicate to you, and anybody else can as well, what they know, for you to make, these different decisions, make these boundaries, make these changes. Because you must choose change. So change doesn't, change does happen naturally, but if you want change towards, betterment, you have to be conscious, and you have to be making conscious choices about that. And if you're getting the yeah-yeah-yeahs, I feel the yeah-yeah-yeahs creeping up in my mind too right now, because I think that this is probably something that I need to listen to. And, if you've got the yeah-yeah-yeahs, like, of course we have to make decisions in our life, like, come on, get to the good stuff. I think we both need to just stop for a minute and drop into asking ourselves, are we actually exercising the agency to really make decisions, really make choices and follow through on those choices that will result in, a better version of ourselves, our highest happiness. And I can say for myself that I definitely need to work on this. And the reason that it's so important to get your mind on board with these decisions, with these choices, and really bring as much energy you can into your conscious awareness is because even when we're talking about, the emotional and spiritual realm and all of the wonderful things about life that come from those places, the mind is able to watch the reactions of the emotions and the spirit. So the mind is able to see what's happening and voila, thank you, negativity bias, address problems. The mind can see where there's an issue in the realm of emotions and spirit with the right teachings. And it can stand like the judge and the jury. Your mind can actually be kind of the courtroom for all the other parts of yourself to come to and plead their case for what they feel is important or what they feel is right or what they feel like you should be doing at this moment. And there is no part of us that should be ignored, ever. When I'm talking about radical responsibility, if you listen to the things that I was listing off in the last episode of what comes with radical responsibility, you will know that radical responsibility it has to lead to radical self-trust. So that means that whatever is happening in you, whatever reaction you have, whatever emotions you feel, whatever inclinations, desires, inspirations, like stemming out of your spirit, you must trust it, even if you don't agree with it, even if you don't like it. You have to trust that it's okay that it's there, even if that means that you are paving a pathway for it to not be there anymore. The only way for you to, usher it out of, your inner world is to bring it to court, is to allow it to be fully. And in order to do that, in order to have that radical self-trust, being okay with whatever you are, that requires faith. Faith, the total faith in whatever powers that be, whatever powers that you align with. I personally think they're all the same thing, so it doesn't really matter what you call it to me. But that faith in whatever powers that be, that faith that nature is on an upward curve, that faith that humanity is good, that faith that we are constantly getting better, that it is kind of, the source of reality, or it is a constant guiding, moving principle that we get better and better. That's inspiration. That's pure inspiration, the realm of possibility. Or it's, what Aristotle and Plato would call perfectibility. It's the realm of spirit. And the place, if you're good, if you're cool, you got all of your ducks in a row as far as mind, heart, spirit, and body, physical reality go, you're good. You have grown that way from childhood. But if you aren't totally aligned, if you're suffering. You need to start in the mind. That is the only place that you can be strategic about getting to wherever you want to go. So, the world really is a good place. And if, you were loved in childhood fully, we're talking holistically, okay? We're talking beyond what we have societally accomplished in general. If you were loved fully, mind, heart, spirit, physical, you were loved really well, it will be hard for you to imagine that the world is a bad place. You will expect love and care overall, even though I'm sure, every single person goes through grief and sadness and sorrow and hardship, etc. But overall, somebody who's been loved fully is going to have a really difficult time not seeing that somebody else who thinks the world is bad is not just suffering. Someone who's been loved really well and really, really fully, really holistically, when they come into contact with somebody who believes the world is really bad, who believes that human nature is bad, that person will recognize in a moment that that person is suffering. It won't ever really impede the person's belief in reality. Because the truth is that even though we have a negativity bias in our minds, the basis of reality, the way that we view reality, like what is real to us, is far beyond the scope of the mind. So feeling like the world is bad, especially when we're talking about, terrible, conspiracy theories and stuff. This stuff has to feel real to a person. This has to be visceral. And what happens with people who have been, victimized as children on whatever level, we often only see, physical abuse or extreme, mental, emotional abuse in very specific terms as being abusive. But there are a whole other host of ways that can be corrosive to a child's mental and emotional and spiritual and even physical well-being. And when we have been mistreated in those ways and we have had kind of really bad experiences shape reality for us, we look outside and, see something that maybe a negativity bias has conjured up, or maybe even somebody online sharing something from a total delusion. It could feel very real. And if that's the case for somebody, the objective truth, and I think I would have, a few years ago, the academic in me would have said, it's my opinion, and I can totally understand why somebody else would have a difference of opinion. Today, where I'm walking in myself, I'm just gonna have to say that it is true. It's objectively true. Of course, this is my opinion because I'm the one who's saying it, but it is absolutely not arguable in my conception of anything that makes logical sense whatsoever. The objective truth is that human nature is good, and we are better off than we ever have been. So COVID kind of screwed up some things in our supply chains, etc., which has kind of made a blip in some of our statistics. But overall, violence has been declining steadily since before the 50s. Poverty has been steadily declining, by the second. Global GDP has surged. The people in poverty in 2015 were half that from the 90s. Famine is nearing an end. It's the lowest it's ever been. That's one of the blips that COVID has created. We are living longer than we ever had. Infant mortality is at an all-time low. Child mortality has halved since the 90s. The kids in school have tripled. This is the absolute best time to be alive. And if you have ever watched a crisis unfold, like a crisis that affects a community, look at COVID. Look at how many people went out and took one for the team. The people that were online that were totally against any kind of like community endeavor to protect the most vulnerable, these people were like a tiny minority. The whole world, essentially, like the overwhelming majority of us came together and did what was right. And I'm not here to argue about, what measures were adequate or inadequate or too much or too little or whatever. But the point is that, 9 out of 10 people, more than that, probably like 95 out of 100 people were willing to do what they needed to do to protect the most vulnerable in our societies. If you've ever seen, like a natural disaster, you watch how many people in the community come out to help other people. People band together. People are good. And I did the yeahs about inspiration because I was taking for granted that I was in touch with my inspiration. And I don't know exactly why the yeahs exist. I think it's a protective mechanism because sometimes like what we need to hear, it actually like hurts minorly. And sometimes certain facets of us, the more shallow facets, kind of try to avoid small pains. I guess especially if things are feeling unbearable, you really don't want to add to it. And if you think that you can't escape, then obviously you don't even want to think about getting out of that cage. If you listen to the first episode, you know what I mean. When we lose touch with our inspiration, when I was out of touch with my inspiration, the question really is like, what are you in touch with at that time? So what was I in touch with that was making me lose touch with inspiration? Because whatever you experience, as I was explaining, it shapes reality for you. I'm not talking about your perception of reality, okay? I'm talking about your reality. Like what you experience, it shapes your lived reality. You can look at the statistics. If you have endured trauma, in childhood or at all, if you trigger warning, if you have experienced sexual abuse, do you know what the likelihood that you'll experience it again compared to somebody who hasn't? Like what you experience kind of shapes what you experience. And when we stop believing in magic, when we stop being in touch with, like the infinite potential and possibilities and this string that runs through it that is constantly guiding us to expand, we stop being aligned with our purpose. We stop being able to be aligned with our purpose. And what we start trying to do is getting our purpose needs met other ways. Because our purpose needs, they are going to speak louder than anything else. And it's very, 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 very difficult, if not impossible, to shut off the drive, our energetic, deepest drive towards what we're here to be and what we're here to give. And trying to get our purpose needs met in other ways is the cause of so many woes. I mean, how many people out there are hooking up with someone because they're lonely, because they want love, because they want a loving relationship, and how detrimental to building a loving relationship is, hooking up with random people. Or, who and how many people out there go out for dinner, go out for drinks, get drunk, eat way too much, because they are in need of excitement. Or how many people living with trauma have addictions? I mean, I feel like I'm laying down kind of the like epidemics of our society right now. And I think they all come from a misalignment and losing faith. The example and why I really understood that I had lost touch with my inspiration was because I was trying to get my purpose needs, my dreams met in ways that fit into the reality that was being shaped by the experiences of being stuck, the experiences that were making me feel stuck. A really good example of this, during COVID, we got stuck. We normally live in Australia. We got stuck in Canada and we couldn't be in Australia. And Australia is really super duper aligned with, my purpose and our goals together as a family. And we moved to Mexico instead because we couldn't go to Australia because the borders were closed. We had the absolute worst time. We were living in one of the most beautiful parts of Mexico and everything was fine and good. And we both gained 20 pounds from overeating and over drinking. We got pregnant and had a miscarriage, which was probably the worst experience I've ever had in my entire life. What came from that was the absolute worst fights I've ever been in with anybody ever, let alone, my husband. Trying to get your purpose needs met other ways that are similar but not the thing often turn out like the worst possible decisions you can make. And when I realized this was happening, when I decided right now, because we are in Canada still, when we got pregnant with our child now, I was told that I couldn't fly. We were on our way back to Australia. I was told I couldn't fly. So we got grounded in Canada. And again, I was trying to get my purpose needs met in all these like other ways because really I had lost touch with how much, the universe is on my side, how much faith I have in my goals and my dreams. And I was trying to do some of the things that I need to do in Australia here or in other places. I even thought about moving back to Mexico. Can you believe that? We thought about buying a place in Mexico, even after all that bad experience, because the purpose needs, they don't shut up. And if you have, the things that make you feel stuck, it becomes difficult to believe that you can do the things that you need to do. And it affects people on every level. It's hard to believe on a mental level that you are that it's possible to do. It's hard to believe on an emotional level in your heart, in your HeartSet, that, you're worthy. It is hard to believe on a spiritual level that you're capable. And it's hard to believe on a physical level that things could dramatically change for you, that you could change your life. That, in essence, is what the feeling of stuck comes from. It's our experiences of, these messages or this proof coming at us that we aren't capable, that we're not worthy, that it can't be done, that, we just aren't designed to live that life, that shape a reality where we can't. And it's like this self-fulfilling thing where our experiences are actually causing our reality. Our perspective on reality, our lived reality is causing, more lived reality that's, the same or worse or aligns with this reality that we have been programmed with. And the way to break that is to simply get in touch with divinity and whatever that, means to you. When I had enough of trying to get my purpose needs met through things that weren't actually truly aligned with my purpose, but, were similar to the things that were, when I just, unstuck myself from that aspect, got in touch with my inspiration, started seeing the world in this, with this much broader viewpoint, I immediately started making decisions, big, scary decisions that are actually aligned with my path, with what I am here to give, with what truly fulfill me. And just like that, I went from feeling just so like a nail hammered into a piece of plywood to, like, I don't know, does it sound trite to liken it to a bird taking off or something like that? All I know is I felt expansive. I felt possibility open up. I felt like I used to, when I was younger, go and take nails out of trees that people had left in them, and I always imagined the trees giving out this groany sigh of relief when I pulled the nail out. That's how I felt, like, oh, I can grow unimpeded. That kind of feeling, it will create thinking, reacting, and behaviors that align with whatever it is that you're trying to create, that align with your greatest fulfillment, your dream life. And what comes from that is you actually creating your dream life. So when people talk about, using mindset to manifest, well, if you can actually get, your mind, emotions, and spirit, your energy on board with whatever it is that you want to create, which requires that this is actually aligned with who you truly are, then, you're a force. This becomes the easiest thing that you possibly can do. So it really isn't about, any kind of strange, magic of manifestation, although there is a little bit of that involved too. It's more just the nature of alignment. And that's why Henry Ford, who is credited for some pretty incredible accomplishments, said that whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Because if you can get your thinking mind to see it as possible, your heart set, your emotional kind of well-being to feel that you're worthy, your energy involved, with confidence in your capacity to do these things, it will result in behaviors that actually create those things. And explaining how to do that step by step is beyond the scope of a podcast. So I've actually decided to make some courseware, and I'm going to do a course for every single one of these episodes in season 1 on how to create your own personal version of ideal happiness, of an ideal life. I'm going to do courseware on every single episode, and I'm going to give Unstuck away. So getting Unstuck, I'm going to give you all for free, and you can continue on in the rest of the courseware if you so choose. Because without faith in more, we can't move on to something else better. Without faith in, the perfection of nature, of humanity, of God, of source, of spirit, without faith in goodness, in growth, without faith in something bigger and better than where we are now, something much bigger and better that we're a part of, we can't possibly change from the way that we are now into something different, something better, something more ourselves. Plato and Aristotle believed that there is a natural inclination of people towards, this kind of perfectibility, that we were driven by a deep desire to progress, and that it was a linear progression towards betterment. And even Charles Darwin wrote The Theory of Evolution, the survival of the fittest, only the strong survive, and all of these dog-eat-dog theories that come from the theory of evolution. He could not reconcile nature's preference for beauty. In a letter to a fellow scientist and friend, he wrote that he couldn't understand why it was that the butterfly was better than the caterpillar, but he could see it happening across the board. This evolution towards betterment in a way that wasn't useful. He couldn't reconcile how something as useless to, physical survival as aesthetics, as beauty, could be stronger than something more practical. So within all of the proof of nature being this dog-eat-dog force, we also have the proof that, a flower in bloom is better than a seed. That, in Darwin's words, the butterfly is preferred to the caterpillar. I think witnessing that gives us permission to, go for being the butterfly. But it also, in Peter Pan and so many other novels, this is such a trope in literature, that if you don't believe in the magic, and if you don't fill your mind and your world with the magic, none happens for you. Because divinity opens you up to the pure realm of possibility. And infinite potential is actually energy. And I'm going to talk about the science a little bit, about the science of energy in the next episode. But billions are being made by the manifestation industry because we intuit this fact that energy is infinite possibilities, that we could create, literally almost anything that we could possibly imagine. And while I don't think that you can just go out and create whatever because you think about it out of the energy around you, I do believe, and I have very good reason to believe, that your deepest desires, your true desires that come from within you and within you alone, are aligned with your purpose. And not only can you absolutely create that for yourself, not only is it absolutely possible, it's actually really hard not to. And once you kind of figure out alignment, or at least get conscious about it, and especially if you have a strategy and a step-by-step plan on how to get into alignment, it actually becomes the easiest thing for you to do. And you can get step-by-step guidance on how to get into inspiration, into that, realm of possibility through the course that I'm creating right now on this. And you can tune into my next episode where I talk more about purpose, more about applying this inspirational force to creating what it is that you're here to give. So it's been really nice chatting with y'all, and I can't wait to talk again. G'day, y'all.